Story 1. Stephen David Catlin was born in 1944. He was adopted as a baby by a couple named Glenn and Martha Catlin. The Catlins lived in Kern County, California. More specifically, they lived in a city called Bakersfield. Stephen grew up there during the 1950s. When Stephen became a teenager, he stopped going to school. He never finished high school. He also showed no interest in working an honest job. He did not want to work hard for a living. When he was 19 years old, he was arrested for forgery. Forgery means he faked signatures or documents to cheat people. He was sent to a California Youth Authority camp for 9 months as punishment. After that, Stephen got married for the first time. That marriage was stormy and violent. He often fought with his wife. He also started using drugs. The drugs made his problems at home worse. In 1966, he married a second woman, but he did not divorce his first wife first. That is called bigamy. To hide this, he used a fake name on the marriage license for the second wedding. Only a few months after the second marriage, Stephen was arrested again. He had stolen a credit card from the gas station where he worked. The judge in court said Stephen was a drug addict. The judge sent him to the state prison in Chino, California. Stephen stayed there for the next 3 years. When Stephen was released from prison, he divorced his first wife. Then he married his second wife again, this time using his real name. But the marriage still did not work. The couple separated after only 10 months. Stephen then got married a third time. That marriage lasted 8 months before he divorced again. Soon after, he found a fourth wife. Her name was Joyce. Stephen married Joyce quickly. But Joyce would not be as lucky as the wives who came before her. She would not escape from this bad marriage. Stephen always loved cars. He was fascinated by them. That love helped him get a job. He worked on a pit crew for a race car driver named Glendon Emery. The team was based in Fresno, California. While working there, Stephen became very interested in Emery's stepdaughter. He started to date her and win her affection. He did this while he was still married to Joyce. Stephen continued to be married to Joyce, his fourth wife, while he was seeing another woman. In April 1976, Joyce became very sick. She had what seemed like a bad flu. She went to Mercy Hospital in Bakersfield. At first, she appeared to get better, but then she suddenly got worse. In May 1976, Joyce died. The doctors said she died from pneumonia. Her body was cremated. Cremation means her body was burned to ashes. Stephen ordered the cremation to happen quickly. In the same month that Joyce died, Stephen married his fifth wife. Her name was Glenna Kay. Stephen and Glenna moved to Fresno, California. Stephen found work at a local garage. He was good at his job and got promotions quickly. Soon he was in charge of 40 employees. But Stephen liked expensive things. He spent a lot of money. He never had enough cash. On October 28, 1980, Stephen's adoptive father, Glenn, died suddenly. Doctors found fluid in Glenn's lungs. They said it was caused by cancer. Stephen again ordered the body to be cremated right away. The cremation happened fast. In 1981, Stephen's bosses at the Fresno garage noticed that auto parts were missing. They checked Stephen's background. They found out he had a criminal record from before. Stephen was forced to resign from his job. He was not charged with any crime for the missing parts. But the money problems got worse. The strain on his finances began to grow. On February 17, 1984, Glenna Kay was visiting Las Vegas with her mother. Suddenly, Glenna became very ill. She went back to Fresno. She was taken to a hospital. Doctors found fluid in her lungs. They tried to figure out what was wrong with her, but they could not diagnose the illness in time. On March 14, 1984, Glenna Kay died in the hospital. After Glenna died, Stephen received $57,000 from life insurance payments. While visiting Glenna in the hospital before she died, Stephen had met another woman. He started dating her. She became his new fiancée. Back in Bakersfield, one of Stephen's ex-wives from earlier, had been watching the news. She saw that many people close to Stephen had died. She became suspicious. She went to the local sheriff's office. She told them about Joyce's death. Joyce's body had been cremated, but the hospital still had some small tissue samples from Joyce. Those samples were saved. In November 1984, the sheriff sent those tissue samples to a lab for testing. A few days later, on December 8, 1984, Stephen and his new fiancée visited his adoptive mother, Martha. Shortly after that visit, Martha collapsed. She died. The doctors said she had a stroke. Stephen ordered that Martha's body be cremated, but this time, the cremation was postponed. Someone decided to wait. An autopsy would be performed first. The autopsy on Martha Catlin's body was performed. The medical examiner found poison in her system. The poison was a chemical called paraquat. Paraquat is a very toxic herbicide, which means it is used to kill weeds. It is deadly to humans if swallowed or absorbed. The police now had evidence that Martha did not die from a stroke. She was poisoned. At the same time, the tissue samples from Joyce Catlin, Stephen's fourth wife, were tested. Those samples also contained paraquat. The hospital had saved them since 1976. The police then ordered tests on tissue samples from Glenna K. Catlin, Stephen's fifth wife. Those samples also showed paraquat poisoning. All three women had the same poison in their bodies. The police went to Stephen's home and garage. They searched the property. In the garage, they found a bottle of paraquat. The bottle had Stephen's fingerprints on it. That meant he had touched the bottle. The police now had physical proof linking Stephen to the poison. On December 23, 1985, Stephen David Catlin was charged in Kern County. He was charged with the murder of Joyce Catlin from 1976. He was also charged with the murder of Martha Catlin from 1984. The police did not charge him yet for Glenna's death because that case would be handled separately. Before the trial for Joyce and Martha began, Stephen got married again. He married his sixth wife. Shortly after that wedding, he was indicted for the murder of his fifth wife, Glenna K. Catlin. The trial for Glenna's murder was held first. The trial took place in Monterey County. This was because there was too much news coverage in Kern County, and the judge wanted a fair jury. In April 1986, the jury found Stephen guilty of murdering Glenna K. Catlin. The same jury then decided his punishment. They gave him life in prison without the possibility of parole. That meant he would never be released. After that conviction, Stephen was brought back to Kern County to stand trial for the murders of Joyce and Martha. That trial began later. On June 1, 1990, the Kern County jury returned a guilty verdict. They found Stephen guilty of both murders. The jury also agreed with the prosecution's special circumstances. Those circumstances were murder for financial gain, murder by poison, and multiple murders. These special circumstances meant Stephen could receive the death penalty. On June 6, 1990, the same jury decided Stephen's punishment. They fixed the penalty as death. The fact that Stephen had already been convicted for Glenna's murder was not told to the jury until after they gave their verdict. That way, the jury's decision was not influenced by the earlier conviction. After the trial, Stephen David Catlin was sent to death row. He was housed at California State Prison in Corcoran, California. His victims, Joyce, Glenna, and Martha, were all dead. His adoptive father, Glenn, had also died under suspicious circumstances, but Stephen was never charged for that death because the body had been cremated and no evidence remained. The ex-wife who had gone to the sheriff in 1984 was the one who helped start the investigation that led to justice. Stephen Catlin remains on death row in California as of the time this story was written. His appeals continued for many years, but the convictions and death sentence stood. The three women who trusted Stephen Catlin died from poison he gave them, and after a long investigation and 2 trials, he he was sentenced to die for his crimes. Story 2. Antoinette Renee Frank was born on April 30th, 1971, in Opelousas, Louisiana. She was one of 4 children born to Adam Frank and Marion Frank. Her father worked for a telephone company. He was also a veteran of the Vietnam War. Her mother stayed at home to take care of the children. Adam Frank was often not at home. When he was home, he was violent. Records later showed that he physically abused his children. He also emotionally abused them. On one occasion, he strangled Antoinette when she was only 2 years old. The family lived in fear of him. As a child, Antoinette was very shy. She kept to herself and did not make many friends. Other children described her as a loner. She did not play much with others. She spent a lot of time alone. In high school, Antoinette joined a program for junior police officers in Opelousas. She liked the uniform and the sense of authority. Later, her family moved to the eastern part of New Orleans. There, she joined the New Orleans Police Explorers, which was a program for young people interested in police work. But the family moved back to Opelousas not long after, so she left the program. Antoinette later claimed that her father's abuse was very severe. She said he once filled the house with gas and threatened to kill the whole family by causing a train to crash into them. After she was in prison, she also said that her father started raping her when she reached puberty. She said he forced her to have 3 abortions between the ages of 16 and 20. A fellow police recruit later observed that Antoinette and her father acted strangely together. They acted like they were lovers. Antoinette would sit on her father's lap at social events. By the time the sexual abuse began, her mother and siblings had already moved out of the house because of Adam Frank's domestic violence. The doctors who performed the abortions were dead by the time investigators looked into these claims in 2009. In June 1988, Antoinette got a job at a Walmart in Opelousas. She had trouble getting along with her co-workers. After 6 months, she was fired for giving false information on her job application. She did not say what the false information was. She graduated from high school in May 1989. After graduation, she moved to New Orleans by herself. She got hired at another Walmart. Her plan was to join the New Orleans Police Department as soon as she turned 20, which was the minimum age to apply. On April 30th, 1991, her 20th birthday, Antoinette applied to the New Orleans Police Department. She took a psychological exam. The results said she had a tendency to lie and to exaggerate her skills and background. She failed that exam, but she hired her own psychiatrist, who gave her a better evaluation. Based on that, she was allowed to enter the police academy. In June 1992, she moved into a house in New Orleans with her father Adam. While she was at the police academy, her father reported her missing. He had found a note she wrote. In the note, she said she hated herself and that she was doomed since the day I was born. She came back home shortly after. In February 1993, she was hired by the New Orleans Police Department. She had presented 2 letters of recommendation. One of them was supposedly from the mayor of New Orleans at that time, Sidney Barthélemy. The mayor later said he never signed that letter. The police department was very short-handed. Officers were paid less than in other cities of the same size. Many officers were leaving. Some had been arrested for murder and drug activity. The department also wanted more African American officers like Antoinette to help ease racial tensions in the city, which was mostly black. Because of these reasons, she was hired even though she had failed standard psychiatric evaluations. She graduated from the police academy on February 28, 1993. She finished near the top of her class. But once she started working as an officer, her fellow officers thought she was too shy. They thought she did not understand what police work really required. They said she lacked decisiveness. Sometimes her behavior seemed irrational. As early as August 1993, her superiors wanted to send her back to the academy for more training. She often had to be reviewed by supervisors. Still, she did have some good moments. She won Officer of the Month awards from a local club for her community work. In June or August of 1993, her father disappeared. She reported him missing. She said he had stayed at her home for a time and then vanished. In November 1994, she handled a call about a man who had been shot. His name was Rogers Lacaze. He was 18 years old and a known drug dealer. Antoinette took a statement from him. She later said she got close to him because she wanted to help him change his life. But she was attracted to his bad boy image. Their relationship became sexual. She knew that being with a drug dealer could end her police career, but she continued anyway. Other police officers noticed that Lacaze was driving her car. They also saw him moving her police unit at the scene of an accident she was investigating. On one call, she introduced him as a trainee. Other times she said he was her nephew. Some witnesses later said that Antoinette and Lacaze would pull over motorists while in a police car and rob them. Antoinette refused to talk about her relationship with Lacaze when investigators asked. She only said she was trying to help him. She later denied that they were dating or had been intimate, but evidence showed otherwise. On the night of March 3, 1995, Antoinette Frank and Rogers Lacaze went to a restaurant called Kim On. The restaurant served Vietnamese food. It was run by the Vu family. Antoinette worked there part-time as a security guard. She knew the layout of the building. She knew where the staff went. She knew where the money was kept. They visited the restaurant 2 times that night. Each time, they ordered food and drinks. During those visits, Antoinette stole a key to the front door. She took it without anyone noticing. Then they left. Around 2 a.m. on March 4, 1995, they came back for a 3rd time. The staff had become suspicious of Antoinette and her companion. One employee, a woman named Chow Vu, decided to hide the restaurant's money. She took the cash that was meant for business expenses and put it away in the kitchen. She did not want it to be easy to find. Antoinette used the stolen key to open the front door. She and Lacaze walked inside. Antoinette rounded up 2 employees, Chow Vu and her brother Quoc Vu. She pushed them into the staff-only area. They were not allowed to leave. At that time, there was a security guard on duty at the restaurant. His name was Ronnie Williams. He was 25 years old. He was also a New Orleans police officer. He worked the same job as Antoinette. He was her colleague. He was sitting in the restaurant doing his job. While Antoinette was watching Chow and Quoc, Lacaze snuck up behind Ronnie Williams. Williams did not see him coming. Lacaze had a gun. He fired 3 shots. All 3 hit Williams. The security guard fell to the ground. He died at the scene. The sound of gunshots startled Antoinette. In that moment of distraction, she lost sight of Chow and Quoc. The 2 siblings ran and hid inside a walk-in cooler. A 3rd employee was also inside that cooler. All 3 hid behind the door. They stayed very quiet. Antoinette and Lacaze then looked for the remaining employees. They found 2 other siblings, Ha Vu, who was 24 years old, and Quang Vu, who was 17 years old. Antoinette and Lacaze grabbed them. They demanded to know where the restaurant's money was. They threatened the brother and sister. The 2 victims told them where the cash was hidden. Antoinette and Lacaze recovered the money. Then, without any warning, Antoinette shot Ha and Quang multiple times. Both siblings died from their wounds. Antoinette and Lacaze tried to find the 3 people hiding in the cooler. They looked around the kitchen. They opened some doors, but they did not find the cooler. The 3 survivors stayed frozen inside. They did not make a sound. After a short time, Antoinette and Lacaze left the restaurant. They took the money with them. They believed they had killed everyone inside. Quoc Vu, who was hiding in the cooler, waited until he thought the killers were gone. Then he ran out of the building. He went to find help. He called the police. Chao Vu stayed inside the cooler. She did not come out. She was too afraid. She decided to wait for the police to arrive. But Antoinette Frank did not stay away. She changed into her police uniform. She got into a police cruiser from her precinct. She drove back to the Kim On restaurant. She arrived before any other officers got there. Her plan was to pretend she was responding to the scene. Her real plan was to find the survivors and kill them before backup arrived. She entered the restaurant. She called out. She tried to lure Chao Vu out of hiding. But Chao recognized Antoinette's voice. Chao knew that Antoinette was one of the shooters. So Chao stayed hidden inside the cooler. She did not answer. She did not come out. Then other police officers arrived at the scene. Chao Vu waited until she heard voices she trusted. She came out of the cooler. She pointed at Antoinette Frank, who was standing there in her police uniform. Chao told the responding officers that Antoinette was one of the people who had committed the murders. At that moment, Antoinette pretended to be innocent. She looked at Chao and asked what had happened. She acted like she had just arrived. She did not know that Chao had seen everything. The other police officers at the scene did not immediately arrest Antoinette Frank. She was one of their own. They had to be sure. But Chao Vu was very clear. She said Antoinette had been inside the restaurant during the shooting. She said Antoinette had been part of the attack. The officers separated Antoinette from the witnesses. They sat her at one table in the restaurant. They sat Chao at another table. They questioned both of them separately. Chao told them everything she had seen. Antoinette claimed she had just arrived at the scene and knew nothing. The police did not let Antoinette leave. They took her to police headquarters for more questioning. Later that night, she confessed. She admitted that she and Rogers Lacaze had planned the robbery and carried out the murders. Lacaze was arrested that same night and also confessed. Antoinette Frank was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. She was believed to be the first New Orleans police officer ever charged with killing a fellow officer. On April 28, 1995, a grand jury indicted both Frank and Lacaze. The court decided to try them separately. Lacaze went to trial first. His trial took place from July 17th to July 21st, 1995. The judge was Frank Morello. The jury found Lacaze guilty on all charges. They sentenced him to death. One key piece of evidence against him was that he had used Ronnie Williams' Chevron credit card at a gas station just minutes after the murders. The card was in his possession. Frank's trial began on September 5th, 1995. The same judge, Frank Morello, presided. Frank's lawyers had subpoenaed 39 witnesses. But when the trial started, they did not call a single one to testify. The prosecution presented the evidence: the stolen key, the confession, the testimony of Chao Vu and Quoc Vu, and the physical evidence from the crime scene. On September 12, 1995, the jury went to deliberate. They needed only 22 minutes to return a guilty verdict on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. At that time, this was the fastest verdict ever recorded for a capital murder case in New Orleans. The next day, the same jury took only 45 minutes to recommend the death penalty. On October 20th, 1995, Judge Morello formally sentenced Antoinette Frank to death. She was sent to death row at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, near Baton Rouge. She became the only woman on Louisiana's death row. 1 month after her sentencing, in November 1995, police made another discovery. A dog led them to dig under Frank's house. They found a human skull with a bullet hole in it. The rest of the body was not found. Police and prosecutors believed the skull belonged to Adam Frank, her father, who had disappeared in 1993. But because Frank was already on death row for the Kim On murders, no serious effort was made to charge her for her father's death. That case remains unsolved. Over the years, Frank's lawyers tried to overturn her death sentence. They argued she had not been given enough help from state-funded experts. They brought in psychiatrists who said she may have had post-traumatic stress disorder from childhood abuse. The state's psychiatrist disagreed and said she had narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial tendencies. On May 22, 2007, the Louisiana Supreme Court ruled 5-2 to uphold her death sentence. In April 2008, Judge Morello signed a death warrant for Frank. She was scheduled to be executed on July 15, 2008, but the Louisiana Supreme Court issued a stay, which delayed the execution. In September 2008, a second death warrant was signed, setting a new date of December 8, 2008. Again, the state Supreme Court voided the warrant. Frank's appeals continued. In 2023, Frank was one of 56 death row inmates in Louisiana who asked the governor for clemency. The state's parole board rejected all 56 petitions in July 2023. On October 13, 2023, Frank's clemency appeal was rejected again. In 2025, the state of Louisiana announced it would resume executions using a new method called nitrogen hypoxia. However, Frank was not eligible for execution because she was still filing a post-conviction appeal against her death sentence. On April 28, 2025, her appeal was heard. On May 15, 2025, a state judge accepted her appeal and ordered a new hearing for December 2025. Rogers Lacaze remained on death row. The Vu family lost 3 children, Ha Quang, and their security guard and friend Ronnie Williams. The survivors, Chow and Quoc Vu, had to live with the memory of that night. The restaurant continued to operate for some time, but the family was never the same. As of her last court hearing in 2025, Antoinette Frank remained the only woman on death row in Louisiana, still fighting to overturn her sentence while the families of her victims continued to wait for justice to be fully carried out. Story 3. Harold Frederick Shipman was born on January 14, 1946 in Nottingham, England. He was born on an estate called Bestwood Estate. This was a council estate, which meant the houses were provided by the local government for families with less money. He was the second of 3 children. He had an older brother and a younger sister. His father was also named Harold Frederick Shipman. His father worked as a lorry driver. His mother was named Vera. Her maiden name was Britton. Both of Shipman's parents were working-class people. They worked hard and did not have a lot of money. Shipman's parents were very religious. They were Methodists. This meant they went to church regularly and followed strict Christian rules. Shipman grew up in this religious home. Shipman was very close to his mother. He loved her more than anyone else in his family. His mother became very sick when Shipman was a teenager. She had lung cancer. Lung cancer is a disease in the lungs that often causes death. When his mother was in the later stages of her illness, she was in great pain. A doctor came to her home to help her. The doctor gave her a drug called morphine. Morphine is a strong painkiller. It made Shipman's mother feel less pain, even though she was still dying. Shipman watched this happen. He saw how the drug calmed her pain. His mother died on June 21, 1963. Shipman was 17 years old at that time. After his mother died, Shipman continued his education. He studied medicine at Leeds School of Medicine. This was part of the University of Leeds. He worked hard and learned how to be a doctor. He graduated in 1970. That meant he finished his medical training and could now work as a doctor. On November 5, 1966, before he finished his medical studies, Shipman married a woman named Primrose May Oxtoby. They had 4 children together over the years. His family life appeared normal from the outside. Shipman started working as a doctor at Pontefract General Infirmary. This was a hospital in Pontefract, West Riding of Yorkshire. He worked there after graduating. Then in 1974, he took his first job as a general practitioner. A general practitioner is a family doctor who sees patients in a local clinic. He worked at a medical center called Abraham Ormerod Medical Center in a town called Todmorden. In 1975, something happened at work. Shipman was caught forging prescriptions. Forging a prescription means he wrote a fake prescription for drugs that were not needed for a real patient. He did this to get a drug called pethidine for himself. Pethidine is a strong painkiller that can be addictive. He was caught by other medical staff. He had to go to court. The court fined him £600. That was a lot of money back then. He also had to go to a drug rehabilitation clinic in York for a short time. A drug rehabilitation clinic helps people stop using addictive drugs. After that, Shipman moved to a new job. In 1977, he started working as a general practitioner at Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde, Greater Manchester. He worked there for many years. He became known in the local community as a normal family doctor. Throughout the 1980s, Shipman continued working as a doctor in Hyde. People in the town trusted him. He seemed like a kind and helpful doctor. In 1993, he opened his own private surgery. A surgery is a doctor's office. His surgery was at 21 Market Street in Hyde. He was now his own boss. He was a respected member of the community. People thought he was a good doctor. In 1983, Shipman appeared on a television program. It was a Granada TV documentary called World in Action. The program was about how to treat mentally ill people in the community. Shipman was interviewed as a doctor who had an opinion on this topic. This shows that at that time, people saw him as a normal and respectable doctor. Shipman's surgery at 21 Market Street opened in 1993. He saw many patients there. Most of his patients were elderly people. Many were women who lived alone. They trusted him because he was their doctor. Shipman started killing his patients sometime in the 1970s, but the clearest pattern began in the 1990s. He used a simple method. He would visit a patient at their home. He often visited in the afternoon. He would tell the patient they needed an injection. He said the injection was for a minor health problem. Sometimes he said it was a vitamin shot or a painkiller. But the injection was not a vitamin. It was a large, deadly dose of a drug called diamorphine. Diamorphine is another name for medical heroin. It is a very strong painkiller. In small doses, it helps people with severe pain. In large doses, it stops a person's breathing. The person dies within minutes. Shipman would give the injection. Then he would stay with the patient until they died. He would sit in their home as they stopped breathing. After they died, he would call the patient's family or a funeral director. He told them the patient had died suddenly from old age or a weak heart. Then Shipman signed the death certificate. A death certificate is an official paper that says how a person died. Shipman wrote false causes of death. He wrote things like old age or heart attack. He did not write that he had given them a deadly drug. Because he was a doctor, other officials trusted his signature. Shipman also changed his patients' medical records. He would write notes saying the patient had been very sick for a long time. He wrote that they had heart disease or lung problems. He wrote these notes after the patient died. This made it look like the death was natural. He used a computer to store these fake records. Between 1975 and 1998, Shipman killed many patients. Most of his victims were elderly women. They were often in good health before he visited them. He killed them in their own homes. He killed them while they were alone with him. One of his victims was Marie West. She was 81 years old. Shipman killed her in March 1995. Another was Irene Turner, 67 years old. He killed her in June 1996. Lizzie Adams was 77. He killed her in December 1996. Jean Lilly was 59. He killed her in April 1997. Ivy Lomas was 63. He killed her in May 1997. Muriel Grimshaw was 76. He killed her in July 1997. Marie Quinn was 67. He killed her in November 1997. Kathleen Wagstaff was 81. He killed her in March 1998. Bianca Pomfret was 49. He killed her in April 1998. Nora Nuttall was 65. He killed her in May 1998. Pamela Hillier was 68. He killed her in June 1998. Maureen Ward was 57. He killed her in June 1998. Winifred Meller was 73. He killed her in June 1998. Joan Melia was 73. He killed her in June 1998. His last known victim was Kathleen Grundy. She was 81 years old. She was a former mayoress of Hyde. That meant she had been the wife of the mayor. She was a well-known person in the town. Shipman killed her on June 24, 1998. He visited her at her home. He gave her a deadly injection of diamorphine. She died soon after. Then he signed her death certificate. He wrote that she died of old age. After Kathleen Grundy died, something unusual happened. Shipman made a fake will. A will is a legal paper that says who gets a person's money and property after they die. Shipman used a typewriter to type a new will. He pretended Kathleen Grundy had written it. In the fake will, Grundy left all her money to Shipman. The will said she was leaving him £386,000. That was a very large amount of money. The fake will did not leave any money to her daughter or her grandchildren. Before the police got involved, some people had already noticed something strange about Shipman. In March 1998, a doctor named Linda Reynolds spoke to the coroner. A coroner is an official who looks into unexpected deaths. Dr. Reynolds worked at a different surgery in Hyde called the Brooks Surgery. She told the coroner that Shipman's patients died too often. She noticed he asked other doctors to sign many cremation forms for elderly women. A cremation form is needed before a body can be burned. She thought the number of deaths was not normal. The coroner told the police. The police looked into it, but they did not find enough evidence. They closed their investigation on April 17, 1998. After they closed the investigation, Shipman killed 3 more people. In August 1998, a taxi driver named John Shaw went to the police. John Shaw drove many elderly customers to the hospital. He noticed that many of his customers died after seeing Shipman. He told the police he suspected Shipman had murdered 21 patients. But at that time, the police did not arrest Shipman. Shipman continued to kill. He did not stop. He used the same method each time. He gave a deadly injection. He signed a false death certificate. He changed the medical records. He did this for more than 20 years. After Kathleen Grundy died, her daughter Angela Woodruff became suspicious. Angela was a solicitor, which is a type of lawyer. She received a call from another lawyer named Brian Burgess. Brian Burgess told Angela that a new will had been found. The will said Kathleen Grundy left all her money to Dr. Harold Shipman. Angela knew her mother would never do that. Her mother loved her children and grandchildren. She would not leave them with nothing. Angela Woodruff went to the police on August 1, 1998. She told them about the fake will. She also told them that Shipman had signed her mother's death certificate. The police decided to investigate. The police ordered Kathleen Grundy's body to be exhumed. To exhume means to dig up a buried body. The body was taken to a laboratory. Doctors there tested samples of her tissue. They found traces of diamorphine in her body. Diamorphine is heroin. Kathleen Grundy did not have cancer or any illness that required strong painkillers. The drug should not have been in her body. The police then looked at Shipman's computer. Shipman had written notes in his computerized medical journal. He claimed that Kathleen Grundy was a drug addict. He wrote that she asked him for injections. But the police examined the computer carefully. They saw that the entries were written after Kathleen Grundy's death. Shipman had gone back and typed false notes to make himself look innocent. The police also found a Brother typewriter in Shipman's possession. The fake will had been typed on a Brother typewriter. The police matched the typewriter to the will. That was strong evidence against him. On September 7th, 1998, the police arrested Harold Shipman. He was taken to the police station. He was charged with murdering Kathleen Grundy. He was also charged with forging the will. After the arrest, the police started looking at other deaths. They found 15 cases that were very similar. In each case, Shipman had signed the death certificate. In each case, the patient had died after he visited them alone. In each case, the patient was an elderly woman in good health before his visit. The police worked with other doctors. They examined medical records. They found that Shipman had injected these patients with diamorphine. He had then written false causes of death. He had changed the patient's medical files to make them look sick. The trial began on October 5th, 1999. The trial was held at Preston Crown Court. Shipman was charged with murdering 15 women. Their names were Marie West, Irene Turner, Lizzie Adams, Jean Lilly, Ivy Lomas, Muriel Grimshaw, Marie Quinn, Kathleen Wagstaff, Bianca Pomfret, Nora Nuttall, Pamela Hillier, Maureen Ward, Winifred Meller, Joan Melia, and Kathleen Grundy. Shipman's lawyers tried to argue that the Grundy case should be tried separately. They said the will gave Shipman a motive, and that would make the jury biased. But the judge said no. All 15 cases were tried together. The trial lasted several months. The jury heard evidence from scientists, police officers, and family members of the victims. The prosecution showed that Shipman had given deadly injections. They showed that he had lied on death certificates. They showed that he had forged the will. Shipman denied everything. He said the scientific evidence was wrong. He said he did not kill anyone. But the evidence was very strong. On January 31st, 2000, the jury finished their discussions. They had talked for 6 days. They found Shipman guilty of all 15 murders. They also found him guilty of forging Kathleen Grundy's will. The judge was Mr. Justice Forbes. He sentenced Shipman to life in prison for each murder. He said all 15 life sentences would be served at the same time. He also gave Shipman 4 more years for the forgery. But the most important part was this. The judge recommended that Shipman never be released from prison. This is called a whole life order. It means he would die in prison. On February 11th, 2000, the General Medical Council removed Shipman's name from the medical register. He was no longer allowed to work as a doctor. Shipman was sent to HM Prison Wakefield in West Yorkshire. This is a high-security prison. He was placed in a cell alone. While in prison, Shipman never confessed. He told his wife Primrose that he was innocent. Primrose believed him. She continued to say he was not guilty even after the trial. On January 13th, 2004, 1 day before his 58th birthday, Shipman was found dead in his cell. He had hanged himself using bed sheets. The prison staff tried to save him, but he was already dead. A post-mortem examination confirmed the cause of death was hanging. After his death, an inquiry was held. The inquiry was led by a judge named Dame Janet Smith. It was called the Shipman Inquiry. The inquiry lasted 2 years. The investigators looked at all the deaths Shipman had certified. They spoke to families and examined records. In July 2002, the inquiry released its report. Dame Janet Smith concluded that Shipman had killed at least 218 patients between 1975 and 1998. She said there could be more, but the evidence was not clear. The total number was later estimated to be around 250 victims. The inquiry also found that Shipman had killed 3 patients early in his career at Pontefract General Infirmary. It also had serious concerns about 4 more deaths, including that of a 4-year-old girl. Most of his victims were elderly women in good health. After the inquiry, changes were made to medical rules in the United Kingdom. Doctors became more careful about prescribing painkillers. Death certificates and cremation forms were changed to include more questions. These changes became known as the Shipman effect. Shipman's body was kept in Sheffield for more than a year. His wife was told by police not to bury him in a normal grave because people might attack the grave. In the end, his body was cremated at Hutcliffe Wood Crematorium in Sheffield. Only his wife and their 4 children attended. A memorial garden called the Garden of Tranquility was opened in Hyde Park, Hyde, on July 30th, 2005. It was built to remember the victims of Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman remains the only British doctor ever convicted of murdering his patients. He never explained why he killed so many people. He took that reason with him when he died. The story of Harold Shipman ends with him taking his own life in prison, leaving behind more than 200 victims and a country that changed its medical laws because of what he did. Story 4. Mikhail Viktorovich Popkov was born on March 7, 1964. He was born in Norilsk, a city in Russia. At that time, Russia was part of a larger country called the Soviet Union. His parents were Russian. They lived in Norilsk for a short time after he was born. Soon after Mikhail's birth, his family moved to another city. They moved to Angarsk. Angarsk is in a region called Irkutsk Oblast in Siberia. Siberia is a very cold and large part of Russia. Mikhail grew up in Angarsk. He lived there for most of his childhood and adult life. Mikhail's mother drank too much alcohol. People who knew the family said she was often drunk. She was also said to be abusive. That means she hurt Mikhail with words or actions. His mother did not treat him well. A doctor who later studied Mikhail's life said that growing up with an alcoholic and abusive mother likely changed Mikhail in bad ways. But during his childhood, no one saw this as a sign of future crimes. It was just a difficult home life. Mikhail went to school in Angarsk. He was an ordinary student. He did not show any special talents or big problems at first. He finished school and then became an adult. He needed a job. He decided to become a police officer. He joined the police in the Irkutsk region. He worked as a policeman for some years. His job gave him a uniform and a car. He learned how to talk to people and how to use police tools. He also learned how to drive to remote places. These were normal skills for a police officer. Later, Mikhail left the police force. He found other work. He became a security guard. He worked at the Angarsk Oil and Chemical Company. That was a big factory. He also worked as a security guard for a private company. These jobs were normal. He did his work and got paid. Mikhail got married. His wife's name was Elena. They had one daughter. Her name was Ekaterina. The family lived together in Angarsk. To outsiders, Mikhail seemed like a normal husband and father. He went to work. He came home. He did not talk much about his past or his feelings. In his free time, Mikhail had certain habits. He thought a lot about what women should or should not do. He believed that women who went to parties without a man with them were doing something wrong. He also thought badly of women who drank alcohol or acted in ways he called immoral. He did not say these thoughts out loud to most people, but inside his mind, these ideas grew stronger over time. Mikhail also had a strange belief about his wife. He thought that Elena was not faithful to him. He believed she had relationships with other men. There was no proof of this. Elena did not cheat on him, but Mikhail decided it was true. This made him very angry. He did not show this anger openly. He kept it inside. He started to hate women in a general way. He connected his wife's imagined betrayal to all women who acted freely. By the early 1990s, Mikhail was in his late 20s. He had a job as a security guard. He had a wife and a daughter. He lived in Angarsk. He had a police uniform from his old job. He still kept that uniform. He also had access to cars. He was strong and knew how to drive to lonely places. He spent many nights driving around the city. He watched women who walked alone at night. He thought about what he wanted to do to them. But so far, he had not acted on those thoughts. That was about to change. In 1992, Mikhail Popkov committed his first murder. He was 28 years old. One night, he put on his old police uniform. He still had the uniform from when he worked as a police officer. He got into a car. The car was a Lada 4x4. This was a type of off-road vehicle that police officers often used. He drove around the streets of Angarsk at night. He looked for a woman who was alone. He found a woman walking by herself. He stopped his car. He showed his police uniform. He told her he was a police officer. He offered her a ride. She believed him because of the uniform. She got into his car. This was the first step of his plan. He did not take her home. Instead, he drove to a remote place. A remote place is far from other people and houses. He chose a lonely road or a forest area. When they arrived, he stopped the car. He forced the woman to get out. He then forced her to take off her clothes. He killed her. He used a tool to kill her. Sometimes he used a knife. Sometimes he used an axe. Sometimes he used a screwdriver or a baseball bat. He did not use a gun. He wanted to be close to the victim. After she was dead, he performed sexual acts on her body. This is called necrophilia. He also cut her body in many places. He mutilated her. He did this because he was angry at women. He believed his wife had betrayed him, so he took that anger out on these women. He left the body in the remote place. Then he drove away. He did this again and again. He developed a pattern. He always wore his police uniform. He always used a police car or a car that looked like one. He always offered a ride to a woman alone at night. He always drove to a remote location. He always forced her to undress. He always killed her with a hand tool. He always mutilated the body and performed sexual acts. Then he left the body where it fell. Between 1992 and 2011, Popkov killed dozens of women. The victims were between 19 and 50 years old. Most were women he thought were immoral. He looked for women who were leaving parties. He looked for women who were drunk. He looked for women he believed were prostitutes. He said later that he wanted to clean the streets of prostitutes. He also targeted women who went out without a male chaperone. A chaperone is someone who goes with you to watch over you. Popkov believed women should not go out alone or with other women. He thought they needed a man with them. One victim was not a woman. Popkov also killed one policeman. He did this during one of his nights. The policeman saw something suspicious. Popkov killed him so he would not be caught. Popkov did not kill every night. He killed when he felt angry or when he saw a woman he disliked. He would go months without killing. Then he would kill again. His job as a security guard gave him free time at night. He drove around Angarsk and other places in the Irkutsk region. He also killed in Vladivostok, a city in the Russian Far East. He traveled there for work or family reasons and killed there too. The bodies were found by other people. Some were found in forests. Some were found near roads. Some were found in ditches. Many of the bodies were found on Wednesdays. This happened because Popkov often killed on Tuesday nights. Then the body would be discovered the next day, which was Wednesday. People started calling him the Wednesday murderer because so many bodies appeared on that day. The police noticed a pattern. The women had all been killed in similar ways. They had been forced to undress. They had been mutilated. They had been sexually assaulted after death. The police also noticed tire tracks at many crime scenes. The tracks came from a Lada 4x4, the same type of off-road vehicle used by police. This was a clue, but the police did not know who the driver was. Some women survived. Popkov attacked them, but they escaped or he let them go. These surviving victims went to the police. They described a man in a police uniform who drove a police car. He offered them a ride. Then he drove them to a remote place. They said he was strong and angry. They said he talked about women being bad. but they could not give a clear name or address. The police wrote down their stories, but they did not catch Popkov. Popkov continued killing for 19 years. From 1992 to 2011, he killed at least 87 women. He later admitted to more. He hid in plain sight. He was a former police officer. He knew how police investigated crimes. He knew how to avoid leaving evidence. He wore gloves. He cleaned his tools. He did not kill near his home. He did not tell anyone what he did. His wife Elena did not know. His daughter Ekaterina did not know. His co-workers at the security jobs did not know. He was careful. He was patient. He killed when he felt the urge. Then he went back to his normal life. He went to work. He ate dinner with his family. He watched television. No one suspected him. The police kept finding bodies. The police kept looking for a killer. But year after year, Popkov remained free. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He looked like a normal man. But at night, he became a murderer. By 2011, he had killed for nearly 2 decades. He showed no sign of stopping. He thought he would never be caught. He thought his police training made him too smart for the police. He was wrong. But that part of the story had not happened yet. For many years, the police in Irkutsk knew there was a killer. They had found many bodies. They had talked to surviving victims. They had tire tracks from a lot of 4x4. But they did not have a name. The case stayed open. No one was arrested. In 2012, the police tried a new method. They decided to test the DNA of many men. DNA is the genetic code inside a person's body. It can be found in blood, skin, or hair. The police had collected DNA from the crime scenes. They did not know whose DNA it was, so they needed to compare it to other men. The police focused on current and former police officers. Why? Because the tire tracks came from a police vehicle, and the surviving victims said the man wore a police uniform. So the killer was likely a policeman or an ex-policeman. The police in Irkutsk collected DNA samples from 3,500 men who were or had been police officers. This was a big task, but they did it carefully. Mikhail Popkov was one of those 3,500 men. He had been a police officer in the past. He was now a security guard, but his name was still on the list. The police asked him to give a DNA sample. He agreed. He did not think they would find anything. He believed he had been careful. The police sent his sample to a lab. The lab compared his DNA to the DNA found on the victims' bodies. There was a match. Popkov's DNA matched the DNA from the crime scenes. The police now had proof. They knew he was the killer. In 2012, the police arrested Mikhail Popkov. He did not run. He did not fight. He went with them quietly. They took him to a police station. They told him he was charged with murder. At first, he did not say much. But later, he started to confess. He confessed to 22 murders. He also confessed to 2 attempted murders. These were the cases where women survived. He told the police how he did it. He described the uniform, the car, the remote places, the tools. He showed no sadness. He spoke in a flat voice. The case went to trial. The trial took place in Irkutsk. It was a regional court. The judges heard all the evidence. The DNA was presented. The surviving victims testified. They pointed at Popkov in the courtroom. They said he was the man who attacked them. Popkov sat in a glass box. He did not show emotion. In January 2015, the court gave its decision. Popkov was found guilty of 22 murders and 2 attempted murders. The court sentenced him to life in prison. In Russia, life in prison means he will never get out. Some people wanted him to be executed, but Russia has a moratorium on capital punishment. A moratorium means the punishment is stopped for now. So execution was not allowed. Life in prison was the strongest punishment. Popkov went to prison, but he was not done confessing. 2 years later, in 2017, he told the police about more murders. He said he had killed 59 additional women. The police did not believe him at first, but they started to investigate. They looked at old cases. They found bodies that had never been linked to him. They found families who had lost women. They found evidence that matched Popkov's confession. A second trial began. This trial was in December 2018. The court looked at 59 new murder charges. The police could only prove 56 of them. For 3 of the murders, there was not enough evidence. The bodies were missing or the files were too old. But for 56 murders, the evidence was clear. Popkov had confessed. His DNA matched. The methods were the same. On December 10, 2018, the court found Popkov guilty of 56 more murders. He received a second life sentence. He now had 2 life sentences. He would remain in prison for the rest of his life. But even after that, Popkov kept confessing. In July 2020, he confessed to 2 more killings. That brought his total admitted victims to 83. The police investigated again. They found enough evidence for 2 of them. On June 4, 2021, Popkov was found guilty of those 2 killings. The court gave him an additional sentence of 9 years and 8 months in prison. This sentence did not change his situation much. He was already serving life, but it showed that all his crimes were being counted. In November 2023, Popkov was found guilty of 3 more killings. He received another 10 years added to his sentence. Again, this was symbolic. He will never leave prison. As of now, Mikhail Popkov has been convicted of 81 murders. He has confessed to at least 87. Some experts believe he may have killed more than 90 women. He is the most prolific serial killer in Russian history. More than Andrei Chikatilo. More than Alexander Pichushkin. He is called the werewolf and the Angarsk maniac. Popkov is now in a prison colony. A prison colony is a special type of Russian prison for life sentences. He is kept in a small cell. He is watched at all times. He will never see his wife Elena or his daughter Ekaterina as a free man. They have visited him in prison, but his wife has said she did not know about his crimes. She was shocked when she learned the truth. The victims' families received some closure. They now knew who killed their mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives. But the pain did not go away. Many of the bodies were found years earlier. Some families had already buried their loved ones. Others had never stopped searching. The trials gave them answers. The police learned from this case. They now use DNA testing more often. They keep better records of tire tracks and other small clues. They also pay more attention to surviving victims. The women who escaped Popkov helped put him in prison. Their testimony was important. Mikhail Popkov sits in his prison cell today. He will die there. He has admitted to killing dozens of women. He has shown no true regret. He once said he was cleaning the streets of immoral women. The court and the public saw this as evil. The life sentence ensures he will never hurt anyone again. The story of Mikhail Popkov, the Angarsk maniac, ends with him locked away for life, while the memory of his victims remains with those who loved them. Story 5. Francisco de Assis Pereira was born on November 29, 1967, in the city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. He was born into a poor family. His childhood was not happy. When he was still a child, one of his aunts molested him. This was a very bad experience for him. After this happened, he developed a strange fixation. He became very focused on women's breasts. This fixation stayed with him as he grew older. When Francisco became an adult, something else happened. His boss at work seduced him. The boss made him have homosexual relationships. Francisco did not want these relationships, but they happened anyway. One of these relationships was with a man who dressed in a goth style. During a sexual act, this goth man almost ripped off Francisco's penis. The injury was very serious. After this event, Francisco became very afraid. He feared that he would lose his reproductive organs. This fear never left him. Because of the injury from the goth man, Francisco felt pain every time he had sex. He could not feel pleasure during sexual acts anymore. Experts later thought that this lack of pleasure might be a reason for what he did later. But at the time, he just lived with the pain. Francisco showed a bad side of himself even before any major crimes. He lived with a travesti named Thana for more than 1 year. Thana later reported that Francisco punched her in the stomach. He also slapped her face. These were violent acts against someone he lived with. The way he hurt Thana was similar to what some women later said happened to them. He punched the stomach. He slapped the face. The same methods appeared again later. Francisco worked as a motorcycle courier. He drove a motorcycle to deliver things for a company. This job was normal, but it gave him a way to move around the city easily. He knew the streets and the subway stations well. He was an extroverted person. That meant he was friendly and talked easily with strangers. He was also convincing. When he spoke to people, they tended to believe him. He could make women feel comfortable with him very quickly. He paid attention to women who looked sad or had their heads down. He looked for women who seemed to be in emotional pain. He looked for women who were having problems in their relationships. He would listen to them describe their situation. Then he would use that information to get closer to them. He acted mainly around subway stations. He liked the lines that connected to the Jabaquara station the most. That was his preferred area. He told women that he worked for a big cosmetics company. He said he was looking for women to take photos for the company. He promised them a chance to be in a photo shoot. Many women wanted to be models. This promise was attractive to them. At this point in his life, Francisco de Assis Pereira was a man with a painful past, a fear of losing his body parts, a history of violence at home, and a way of talking to sad women near subway stations. He had not yet committed the crimes that would make him famous, but his patterns were already forming. Francisco de Assis Pereira started approaching women near subway stations in Sao Paulo. He chose the Jabaquara station most often. He would look for women who walked with their heads down. He looked for women who seemed sad or upset. He believed these women were easier to trick. He told each woman the same lie. He said he worked for a large cosmetics company. He said the company needed new faces for photo shoots. He promised the woman that she could be a model. He said the photo shoot would happen that same day. He said he would take her there on his motorcycle. Many women believed him. They got on the back of his motorcycle. He drove them to the state park. This park was a large area with thick bushes and trees. It was quiet and far from busy streets. Once they were inside the park, Pereira took them to a hidden spot. Then he attacked them. He forced them to have sex. He raped them. After raping them, he strangled them. He used shoelaces to strangle his victims. He pulled the laces tight around their necks until they stopped breathing. He also bit their bodies. He left bite marks on their shoulders, breasts, and legs. He punched them in the stomach and slapped their faces. These were the same violent acts he had done to Thana before. After the women were dead, he left their bodies in the park. He took off their clothes. Many bodies were found naked. He did not try to hide them well. He just left them in the bushes. The first victim was Elisangela Francisco da Silva. She was 21 years old. She came from a poor family in Parana. She had been living with her aunt in Sao Paulo since 1996. She left school in the 7th grade because her family had no money. On July 28, 1998, her naked body was found in the state park. The body was already decomposed. It took 3 days to identify her. Her aunt said, "I hoped it was not her." On the day she disappeared, Elisangela left home saying she would return in 2 hours. She never came back. The second victim was Raquel Mota Rodriguez. She was 23 years old. She worked as a saleswoman in a furniture store. She wanted to earn money to help her family, who lived far away in Rio Grande do Sul. On January 9th, She left work at 8 p.m. She went to the Jabbaquara station. She called her cousin Legia. She told her cousin that she had met a young man. He offered her a chance to pose as a model in Diadema. Her cousin warned her not to go. Raquel said she would not go, but she went anyway. She never returned home. Her body was found in the park on January 16th. The third victim was Selma Ferreira Queiroz. She was a minor, still a teenager. She wanted to study accounting or computer science. On July 3rd, she disappeared between her house in Coxa and downtown Sao Paulo. She was going to deal with paperwork about being fired from her drugstore job. The next day, a man called her sister Sarah. He said Selma had been kidnapped. He demanded 1,000 reais as ransom. He said he would call back that afternoon. He never called back. That same day, Selma's body was found in the state park. She was naked. There were signs of rape and beating. There were bite marks on her shoulders, breasts, and legs. She had been strangled. Shortly before she disappeared, she told her boyfriend she would be late to watch the World Cup with him. She said she was on her way, but she never arrived. The fourth victim was Patricia Goncalves Marinho. She was 24 years old. She had never told her family that she dreamed of being a model. On April 17th, she left her grandmother's house where she lived. She disappeared. Her body was found on July 28th in a deserted area of the state park. The police could only identify her because of the clothes and jewelry found next to her body. She had been raped and strangled to death. Pereira attacked more women. Some did not die. 9 women survived his attacks. They later told the police that he did the same things. He promised modeling jobs. He took them to the park on his motorcycle. He raped them. He tried to strangle them, but they fought back or escaped. These survivors gave important information about his methods. Pereira did not only use lies about modeling. He also listened to women's problems. He would let them talk about their sad lives. Then he used that information to make them trust him. He acted like a friend who cared. Then he attacked. One time, Pereira used a check sheet that belonged to a woman named Isadora Frankel. He used that check to buy a helmet. Isadora was not his girlfriend. She was just a woman he chose at random. He later said she let him use the check. That was a lie. But at the time, he was released after explaining himself. While he was committing these crimes, he continued working as a motorcycle courier. His job let him move around the city freely. He knew the streets. He knew the subway stations. He knew the park. His motorcycle was his main tool. It helped him approach women, take them to the park, and leave quickly. One day, he approached a girl while having a psychotic episode. This means he was not thinking clearly. The girl said she could not go with him at that moment. He gave her a business card. The card had the name Jean on it. It also had the phone number of the company he worked for. He told her to call him when she was available. The girl took the card. She did not know yet that this card would later help the police find him. Pereira's pattern was clear. He found sad women near subway stations. He promised them modeling jobs. He took them on his motorcycle to a quiet park. He raped them. He strangled them with shoelaces. He bit them. He left their naked bodies in the bushes. Then he went back to work like nothing had happened. The girl who received the business card from Pereira did not forget what happened. She remembered the strange man who approached her during his psychotic episode. He gave her a card with the name Jean and a phone number. She thought about this incident. Then she decided to report it to the police. She went to the DHPP. The DHPP was the police department that investigated homicide and personal protection in Sao Paulo. She told the officers what happened. She gave them the business card. The police immediately called the phone number on the card. The number connected to a courier company. This was the same company where Pereira worked as a motorcycle courier. The police already knew this company. They had investigated it before because of the check sheet incident with Isadora Frankel. When they called this time, the owner of the company answered. The owner told the police that Francisco de Assis Pereira no longer worked there. He said Pereira had left suddenly. Before leaving, Pereira had left a note on a table. The note said something like, "My journey here has ended," and he apologized for leaving suddenly. On the same table, he left a newspaper. That newspaper showed a sketch of the killer. The police had released a sketch of the man they were looking for based on descriptions from survivors. Pereira left that newspaper behind. The owner also told the police that he had noticed strange behavior from Pereira days before. He said Pereira acted differently. He seemed nervous or unusual. Then one day, Pereira just resigned and left without much explanation. The police now had a name and a face. They knew Francisco de Assis Pereira was their suspect. But he had already run away. He left Sao Paulo. The manhunt began. For 23 days, the police searched for Pereira. He traveled far from Sao Paulo. He ended up in a town called Itaqui in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. This was near the border with Argentina. He stayed with a fisherman named João Carlos Villaverde. On August 4, 1998, João Carlos Villaverde was watching television. He saw a report about the park killer. The report showed a picture of Francisco de Assis Pereira. João Carlos recognized the man. The man staying at his house looked exactly like the picture. He immediately called the police. The police arrived and arrested Pereira without a fight. The manhunt was over. He was taken into custody. After his arrest, Pereira talked to the police. He helped them find the bones of Selma Ferreira Queiroz. The police had not yet found her body in the state park, but Pereira knew where he left her. He showed them the exact location. This helped the police close that case. During questioning, Pereira explained his methods. He said he chose women who looked sad or had their heads down. He said he looked for women with emotional problems. He said he pretended to be a model scout from a big cosmetics company. He admitted to using his motorcycle to take them to the park. He admitted to raping and strangling them. He said he used shoelaces to strangle them. He also said something strange. He claimed that he was possessed by an evil force. He said, "I am a person with a good and a bad personality. Sometimes I am not able to dominate this dark side. I pray, but I cannot resist. I wish that they would not go with me into the park, that they would run away." He later said he was about to start eating his victims. That meant cannibalism. The police believed he was trying to make himself seem scarier or more insane. The police and psychiatrists examined him. They were impressed by one fact. He was unarmed. He had no gun, no knife. Yet he convinced women to climb onto the back of his motorcycle and go into a dark, empty park with a stranger. His ability to talk and lie was his only weapon. Pereira went to trial. The court found him guilty of raping and murdering 11 women. He was also found guilty of assaulting 9 other women who survived. His total sentence added up to 268 years in prison. This was a symbolic number because Brazilian law does not allow a person to serve more than 30 years in prison. But the sentence showed how many crimes he committed. While in prison, Pereira received many letters. Thousands of women wrote to him. Some were admirers. One woman named Jacera wrote to him. She later became his wife. She visited him in prison. She tried to help him with his legal problems. He boasted that she was intelligent and had a degree in history and geography. But the marriage did not last. They separated later. His ex-bride later reported strange things about his actions and personality. On December 18, 2000, there was a riot at the Taubate House of Custody and Psychiatric Treatment. Other inmates tried to kill Pereira during the riot. 4 inmates were killed in that riot, but Pereira survived. He was then moved to another psychiatric facility. Psychiatrists who studied him said he had a pseudo-psychopathic state of mind. They said this condition was irreversible. They said he would likely commit crimes again if he was released. Under Brazilian law, a prisoner can only be held for a maximum of 30 years. Pereira was arrested in 1998. That means he is scheduled for release in 2028. After his arrest and conviction, Pereira gave interviews from prison. He said he considered himself a normal person. He said he was alive because of his faith. He said the crimes were not his own will. He blamed an evil thing, but the evidence showed otherwise. He planned each attack. He chose his victims. He used the same lies and the same methods every time. The victims' families lived with their loss. Elisangela's aunt never saw her niece come home. Raquel's family in Rio Grande do Sul never got the money she wanted to send them. Selma never studied accounting or computer science. Patricia's family learned only after her death that she dreamed of being a model. In 2004, a research company called IBOP did a survey for the public prosecutor's office. The survey asked Brazilians which police case they remembered most. The Park Maniac case was remembered by 76% of people. It was the most remembered police case in Brazil between 2006 and 2007. Francisco de Assis Pereira remains in a psychiatric prison facility, waiting for the year 2028 when Brazilian law says he must be released, while psychiatrists warn that his mind will never change. Story 6. Dorothea Helen Gray was born on January 9, 1929, in Redlands, California. Redlands is a small city east of Los Angeles. Her father was named Jesse James Gray. Her mother was named Trudy May Gray. Both of her parents drank alcohol too much. They were alcoholics. Dorothea had several brothers and sisters. Reports say she had either 6 or 7 siblings. The family did not have a stable or happy home. Her father often acted in frightening ways. He would hold a gun to his own head in front of his children. He threatened to kill himself many times. This scared Dorothea and her siblings. In 1937, when Dorothea was 8 years old, her father died. He died from tuberculosis, which is a lung disease. After her father died, her mother had to take care of all the children alone. But her mother worked as a sex worker to earn money. The government decided that the mother was not able to care for the children properly. In 1938, when Dorothea was 9 years old, her mother lost custody of all the children. That means a judge said the mother could no longer keep them. Then, later that same year, Dorothea's mother died in a motorcycle accident. Dorothea was only 9 years old, and both of her parents were now dead. After her mother died, Dorothea and her brothers and sisters were sent to an orphanage. An orphanage is a home for children who have no parents. While she lived in the orphanage, a person there sexually abused her. That means they touched her in a wrong and illegal way. She did not have any adult to protect her. When Dorothea turned 16 years old, in 1945, she got married for the first time. Her first husband was named Fred McFall. He was a soldier who had just come back from fighting in World War II. They had 2 daughters together. The first daughter was born in 1946. The second daughter was born in 1948. Dorothea did not keep both daughters. She sent one daughter to live with relatives in Sacramento, a city in California. She put the other daughter up for adoption. That means she gave that baby to another family to raise. She also had a miscarriage, which means a pregnancy ended early and the baby did not survive. In the spring of 1948, when Dorothea was 19 years old, she was arrested for the first time. She had bought women's accessories like purses or jewelry using fake checks. The checks were forged, meaning she signed names that were not hers. This happened in Riverside, California. She was charged with 2 counts of forgery. She said she was guilty. A judge sent her to jail for 4 months. After jail, she had to be on probation for 3 years. Probation means she had to follow rules and let a police officer check on her. 6 months after she got out of jail, Dorothea left Riverside. Later that same year, her first husband, Fred McFall, left her. He did not want to stay married to her anymore. In 1952, Dorothea married a second time. She married a man named Axel Bren Johansen. He was a merchant seaman, which means he worked on ships that carried goods. They got married in San Francisco. At this time, Dorothea created a fake identity. She pretended to be a Muslim woman from Egypt and Israel. She called herself Taya Singoalanayarda. Her marriage to Axel was not peaceful. They fought often. When Axel was away at sea for his work, Dorothea invited other men to their home. She also gambled away Axel's money. Gambling means she played games of chance and lost his money on purpose. In 1960, Dorothea was arrested again. She had opened a business that claimed to do bookkeeping, which means keeping financial records for other people. But the business was a front. A front is a fake business used to hide illegal activity. The real business was a brothel, which is a place where people pay to have sex. This happened in Sacramento. She was found guilty. A judge sent her to the Sacramento County Jail for 90 days. In 1961, Dorothea's second husband, Axel Johansen, had her sent to a mental hospital. The hospital was called DeWitt State Hospital. He did this because Dorothea had been drinking too much alcohol, lying constantly, committing crimes, and trying to kill herself. At the hospital, doctors examined her. They said she was a pathological liar. That means she lied all the time, even when there was no reason to lie. They also said she had an unstable personality, which means her moods and behaviors changed quickly and unpredictably. Dorothea and Axel divorced in 1966. Even after the divorce, she kept using his last name, Johansen. She then created another new identity. She pretended to be a devout Christian, which means a very serious and faithful Christian. She called herself Sharon Johansen. She also started to act like a caregiver. She offered young women a safe place to live for free. She said she wanted to help women who were poor or who had been abused. In 1968, Dorothea married for the third time. She married a man named Roberto Jose Puente. This marriage lasted only 16 months. Dorothea said that Roberto abused her. She tried to give him divorce papers, but he ran away to Mexico. The divorce was not finished until 1973. Even after the divorce, Dorothea kept using his last name, Puente. She used the name Dorothea Puente for the rest of her life. In 1975, she asked a court for a restraining order against Roberto. A restraining order is a legal paper that tells someone to stay away from you. After her third divorce, Dorothea Puente focused on running a boarding house. A boarding house is a large home where people rent rooms. Her boarding house was near the corner of 15th Street and F Street in Sacramento. She wanted to help people who had problems. She held Alcoholics Anonymous meetings there. Alcoholics Anonymous is a group that helps people stop drinking alcohol. She also helped homeless people and people with mental illness. She helped them sign up for Social Security benefits, which is money the government gives to elderly or disabled people. Dorothea built a public image. She wanted people to see her as a respectable older woman. She wore old-fashioned clothes and large glasses. She did not dye her gray hair. She became known in the local Hispanic community as a generous person. She gave money to charities. She paid for school scholarships for students. She paid for radio programs. She also met and married a fourth husband, a man named Pedro Angel Montalvo. But 1 week after the wedding, Pedro suddenly left her and never came back. On December 21st, 1978, Dorothea Puente was convicted of a crime again. She had illegally cashed 34 checks from the state and federal government. Those checks belonged to her tenants, the people who rented rooms from her. A judge gave her 5 years of probation and ordered her to pay back $4,000. That was the last event before the crimes began. Dorothea Puente was 49 years old. She had a long history of lying, stealing, forging checks, running a brothel, and spending time in jail and a mental hospital. She had lost both parents as a child. She had been abused in an orphanage. She had married 4 times, and each marriage ended badly. She now ran a boarding house in Sacramento, and she had learned how to get people to trust her. After her conviction in December 1978, Dorothea Puente continued running her boarding house at 1426 F Street in Sacramento. She still had to follow probation rules, but she began looking for new tenants. She wanted people who were weak, old, or had mental problems. She chose these people because they were easier to control. She also wanted people who received Social Security checks. That way, she could take their money after they died. On January 16, 1982, Dorothea went to a bar. She met a 74-year-old man named Malcolm McKenzie. She talked to him nicely and went back to his apartment with him. While they were together, she put something into his drink without him knowing. That drug made him sleepy and confused. While he could not move or think clearly, Dorothea stole from him. She took a coin collection, watches, and jewelry. She even took a diamond ring off his finger. He later reported this to the police, but Dorothea was not arrested for this crime at that time. On April 28, 1982, a 61-year-old woman named Ruth Monroe died. Ruth had visited Dorothea's boarding house 2 weeks before her death. When Ruth arrived at the house, she was in good health. But on April 25th, she told a friend, "I am so sick I feel like I am going to die." No one knew why she was sick. 3 days later, she was dead. Doctors later found that she had a very large amount of codeine in her body. Codeine is a drug that slows down breathing. Ruth died because her breathing stopped. The death was first called an undetermined overdose, which means doctors were not sure if it was an accident or on purpose. Later, it was ruled a homicide, which means murder. On May 16, 1982, Dorothea visited a 49-year-old woman named Dorothy Osborne at her home. Dorothea made a drink for Dorothy. About 8 hours after that visit, Dorothy noticed that checks, credit cards, and other items were missing from her home. Dorothy reported this to police. This led to Dorothea being convicted of 3 grand theft charges. A judge sent her to prison for 5 years. She was also put on state parole until March 21, 1986, and her federal parole was extended to 1990. While Dorothea was in prison, she started writing letters to a 77-year-old man named Everson Theodore Gilmouth. He lived in Oregon. He was retired. Dorothea became friendly with him through letters. At the beginning of September 1985, Mr. Gilmouth drove his truck with a trailer to Sacramento. He arrived at Dorothea's boarding house. On September 9, 1985, Dorothea was released from prison early. She had served only half of her 5-year sentence. When she got out, Mr. Gilmouth and a friend named Ricardo Ordorica picked her up. Ricardo lived with his family in the downstairs part of the F Street house. In October 1985, Dorothea wrote a letter to Mr. Gilmouth's sister. She told the sister that she and Mr. Gilmouth were going to be married on November 2nd. This was a lie. She did not plan to marry him. She had another plan. Shortly after that, Dorothea hired a handyman named Ismael Carrasco Flores. A handyman is someone who does repairs and building work. She asked him to build a wooden box. The box had to be 6 feet long, 30 inches wide, and 30 inches tall. She agreed to pay him by giving him Mr. Gilmouth's truck and $800 in cash. Ismael built the box. The next day, he noticed that the box had been nailed shut with the lid closed. Dorothea then asked Ismael to help her move the box. The box now weighed about 300 pounds, which is as heavy as 2 large adult men. She wanted to move it to a storage place, but then she changed her mind. Instead, she had him help her take the box to a place near a river. The river was about 1 hour's drive from Sacramento. They left the box there. On January 1st, 1986, a fisherman was walking along the Sacramento River. He saw the box. It looked suspicious, so he called the authorities. Police opened the box. Inside, They found a human body that was severely decomposed, meaning it had been dead for a long time and was breaking down. The body was wrapped in several plastic bags and covered with a bed sheet. The sheet was held closed with electrical tape. There were also mothballs and toilet deodorizer placed inside the box. These items were used to hide the smell of death. Police could not identify the body right away. It took more than 2 years to confirm it was Everson Theodore Gilmouth. That identification happened on December 28, 1988. After Mr. Gilmouth died, Dorothea had mailed forged letters and cards to his sister. The letters pretended to be from Mr. Gilmouth. She wanted the sister to think he was still alive. Dorothea also forged Mr. Gilmouth's signature on the title of his truck so she could own it. She kept cashing his Social Security benefit checks until July 1986, many months after he was dead. In the fall of 1986, a 78-year-old woman named Betty Mae Palmer came to live at Dorothea's boarding house. On October 14, 1986, Dorothea got a California ID card. The ID had Dorothea's photo on it, but the name on the ID was Betty Mae Palmer. 2 months later, Dorothea changed the mailing address on Betty's Social Security checks. The checks were sent to Dorothea's address instead of to Betty. Dorothea then signed Betty's name on the checks. She cashed nearly $7,000 of Betty's benefit checks. On October 21, 1986, Dorothea called a notary public. A notary is someone who can witness signatures on legal documents. She told the notary to come to a hospital room. In that room was a 78-year-old woman named Leona Carpenter. Leona had taken too much of a drug called flurazepam. That drug is used to help people sleep, but too much can be dangerous. Dorothea got power of attorney over Leona. Power of attorney means Dorothea could legally sign papers and make decisions for Leona. Just 10 days later, Dorothea started cashing Leona's Social Security checks. In December, Leona was released from the hospital. She went to live with Dorothea at the boarding house. But Leona became sick again and returned to the hospital. After she was discharged a second time, in February 1987, she disappeared. No one saw her again. In February 1987, a 62-year-old man named James Gallup moved into Dorothea's home. On July 20th, 1987, doctors found a tumor in his colon. A tumor is a lump of cells that could be cancer. He agreed to more tests. But then Dorothea called his doctor's office. She told them that James had gone to Los Angeles and would not be coming back. That was a lie. In July 1987, a 58-year-old man named Eugene Gamble was found dead. He had taken too much of a drug called amitriptyline and also alcohol. The death looked like suicide, which means killing yourself on purpose. Dorothea was his landlady. She told people that Eugene had tried to kill himself before. Police did not charge her with his death, but later investigators thought he might have been another victim. On October 2nd, 1987, a 61-year-old woman named Vera Faye Martin was sent to live with Dorothea. 3 days later, Dorothea started forging Vera's Social Security checks. She cashed more than $7,000 of those checks. On October 19, 1987, Vera failed to call her daughter on her birthday. Every year before that, Vera had always called her daughter on that day. The daughter became worried. On October 21, 1987, a 65-year-old woman named Dorothy Miller moved into an upstairs room at Dorothea's house. Dorothea introduced her to Ricardo Ordorica, the same friend who had picked Dorothea up from prison. In November, Ricardo became the official person who received Dorothy Miller's Social Security checks for her. Just weeks after Dorothy arrived at the house, she disappeared. On November 20th, 1987, Dorothea hired a carpet cleaner. There was a large pile of foul-smelling slime in Dorothy's room. The slime smelled like rotting flesh. Dorothea told the carpet cleaner it was just sewage, which is waste water from toilets. The carpet cleaner removed it. Dorothea kept forging Dorothy's checks after Dorothy was gone. She cashed more than $11,000. On November 29, 1987, a woman named Brenda Trujillo sent a letter to the Social Security office in Sacramento. Brenda said that Dorothea had stolen her Social Security checks, totaling $3,500. Brenda had met Dorothea in jail in 1982. They had been cellmates. After Brenda got out of jail, she moved into Dorothea's boarding house. Dorothea helped her apply for Social Security benefits. But then Brenda said Dorothea drugged her and called her parole officer. Because of that call, Brenda's parole was revoked, which means taken away. She was sent back to jail. While she was in jail, she could not get her checks. In February 1988, a 51-year-old man named Alvaro Bert Gonzalez Montoya arrived at Dorothea's home. In March, a form was filed that made Dorothea the person who would receive Bert's benefit checks. At the end of August, a roommate saw a man taking Bert's clothes out of a closet. Bert was last seen on August 24th. He missed a doctor's appointment on August 29th. Dorothea told several people that Bert had gone to Mexico to visit his relatives. Social workers tried to contact Bert in September and October. They could not reach him. In November, Dorothea asked a former convict named Donald Anthony to help her. Donald had been working in her yard. She asked him to call the social worker and pretend to be Bert's brother-in-law. Donald agreed. He called and said his name was Michel Obregon. He told the social worker that he had driven Bert from the F Street house to Utah. The social worker did not believe him. She told Dorothea she was going to call the police. On November 10th, the social worker received a letter. The letter said it was from Michel Obregon. It was wrapped in a paper towel, which the writer used to avoid leaving fingerprints. On March 9, 1988, a 55-year-old man named Benjamin Fink was sent to live with Dorothea. His brother visited him every week for 6 weeks. Then, at the end of April, Benjamin was gone. Another tenant in the house smelled a bad odor coming from Benjamin's room. The tenant told Dorothea. Dorothea said the smell was from a sewer backup, which is when waste pipes get blocked. On April 29th, Dorothea bought 12 bags of cement. Cement is a powder that turns into hard stone when mixed with water. In June, she had a hole dug next to the door of a metal shed in her yard. Then the hole was filled in with concrete, which is cement mixed with water and sand. During all these years, some people noticed strange things. Tenants went missing. Checks were cashed after people disappeared. Bad smells came from rooms and from the yard. But no one called the police to investigate. Dorothea always had an excuse. She said people moved away, went to Mexico, or went to Los Angeles. She said the smells were from sewage or dead animals. People believed her because she seemed like a nice, helpful old woman. By November 1988, Dorothea Puente had killed at least 9 people. She used drugs to poison them. The drugs she used included codeine, flurazepam, amitriptyline, doxylamine, haloperidol, carbamazepine, loxapine, and diphenhydramine. Some of these drugs are for sleep. Some are for anxiety. Some are for mental illness. When she gave too much of these drugs to a person, that person stopped breathing or their heart stopped. After the victim died, Dorothea wrapped the body in plastic, sheets, or bedspreads. She used tape or knots to seal the wrappings. She then buried the bodies in her yard. She buried some under a metal shed. She buried some under a gazebo. She buried some under concrete. She buried some in shallow holes. She cut off the head, hands, and lower legs of at least one victim, Betty Mae Palmer, so the body would be harder to identify. She continued to cash her victims' Social Security checks after they were dead. She forged their signatures. She sent fake letters to their families. She lied to social workers. She paid other people to lie for her. She used her friendly image to hide what she was doing. On November 7, 1988, police in Sacramento spoke with a man named John Sharp. John had lived in Dorothea Puente's boarding house before. The police wanted to ask him about Alvaro Montoya, who had disappeared. At first, John Sharp told the police that he had seen Alvaro 2 days earlier. That was a lie. Then John slipped a note to the police officer. The note said, "She wants me to lie to you." The word she meant Dorothea. After that, John met with the officer again and told the truth about what had happened. On November 11th, 1988, a detective went to Dorothea's house at 1426 F Street in Sacramento. The detective asked Dorothea for permission to dig in her yard. The detective had noticed areas where the ground looked like it had been dug up recently. Dorothea gave permission. The detective started digging. 30 minutes later, he found a body buried in the yard. That was the first body discovered. Just a few hours after the detective found the body, Dorothea Puente left her house. She did not tell anyone where she was going. She slipped away from the police. On November 13th, 1988, 2 days after the body was found, the police issued an all-points bulletin for Dorothea. An all-points bulletin is an alert sent to all police departments to look for a person. Dorothea had run away to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is about 380 miles south of Sacramento. She was using a fake name. She called herself Donna Johansson. On November 15th or 16th, she went to a bar near her motel. At the bar, she met a man named Charles Wilkes. They talked. The next day, Charles saw a news report on television. The CBS Morning News showed Dorothea's picture and said she was wanted by police. Charles recognized her as the woman he had met at the bar. He contacted a man named Gene Silver, who worked for CBS. Gene met with Charles at his apartment. Together, they called the local police in Los Angeles. On November 16th, 1988, police went to the motel where Dorothea was staying. They arrested her. She was taken into custody. That same day, police flew her from the Hollywood Burbank Airport back to Sacramento. Police officers went with her on the plane. When she arrived in Sacramento, she was booked into the county jail. Booking means the police take her fingerprints, photograph her, and record her personal information. She was formally charged with the murder of Alvaro Montoya. After Dorothea was arrested, police continued digging in the yard at 1426 F Street. They found more bodies. They found Betty Mae Palmer in a shallow hole in the front yard. Her head, hands, and lower legs were missing. They found Leona Carpenter in the southeastern corner of the yard. They found James Gallup buried under a gazebo. They found Vera Faye Martin under a metal shed. They found Dorothy Miller under a slab of concrete near some rose bushes. They found Benjamin Fink near the metal shed, wrapped in a plastic bedspread with duct tape and blue absorbent pads. They found Alvaro Montoya buried next to Leona Carpenter. In total, police recovered 7 bodies from the property. The body of Everson Gilmouth had already been found by the river in 1986. The body of Ruth Monroe had been found in 1982, but was originally ruled an overdose. The body of Eugene Gamble was found in 1987, but was ruled a suicide at that time. On March 10, 1989, the criminal charges against Ismael Flores, the handyman who built the box for Dorothea, were dismissed. The law said a crime had to be charged within a certain number of years. That time period had expired 3 years after Gilmouth's body was found. Later, Ismael Flores was given immunity. Immunity means he could not be prosecuted for his role. In exchange, he agreed to testify against Dorothea in court. On March 31, 1989, the prosecutor filed an amended complaint. An amended complaint is an updated list of charges. Dorothea was now charged with 9 counts of first-degree murder. First-degree murder means the killing was planned ahead of time. Because of the number of victims, the case qualified for the death penalty. Investigators said that most of the victims had been drugged until they died from an overdose. Then Dorothea wrapped them in sheets and plastic and buried them in pits in the backyard. On May 24, 1990, the prosecutor finished presenting his evidence at a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is when a judge decides if there is enough evidence to send the case to trial. The prosecutor had called 71 witnesses to testify. He had introduced 108 pieces of evidence, which are called exhibits. On June 19, 1990, the judge ruled that there was enough evidence. He said there was ample circumstantial evidence to send Dorothea to trial. Circumstantial evidence means facts that lead to a logical conclusion, even without a direct witness. On July 31, 1990, Dorothea pleaded not guilty to all charges. The trial was delayed many times. On October 19, 1992, a judge ruled that Dorothea would face all 9 murder counts. The trial would be held in Monterey County, not Sacramento. This is called a change of venue. It is done when a defendant might not get a fair trial in the original location because of too much publicity. On December 21, 1992, 12 jurors were selected for the trial. There were 8 men and 4 women. The next month, 6 alternate jurors were chosen. Alternates are extra jurors who listen to the trial in case one of the main jurors cannot continue. The alternates were 5 women and 1 man. The trial began on February 9, 1993. Over the course of the trial, 156 witnesses testified. More than 3,100 exhibits were submitted as evidence. The court transcript, which is the written record of everything said in court, was more than 22,000 pages long. The jury began to discuss the case after all the evidence was presented. They deliberated for 11 days. Deliberation means the jury talks privately to decide if the defendant is guilty. On August 2, 1993, the jury told the judge, Michael J. Verga, that they could not reach an agreement on all 9 counts. This is called a deadlock. The jury asked for further instruction. The next day, the judge ordered the jury to go back and keep trying to break the deadlock. On August 26, 1993, the jury announced its verdict. Dorothea Puente was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. The 3 victims were Benjamin Fink, Leona Carpenter, and Dorothy Miller. On the other 6 counts, the jury remained deadlocked. Those 6 victims were Ruth Monroe, Everson Theodore Gilmouth, Betty Mae Palmer, James Gallup, Vera Faye Martin, and Alvaro Gonzalez Montoya. Because the jury could not agree, those charges did not result in a conviction. The trial then moved to the penalty phase. The penalty phase is when the jury decides if the convicted person should receive the death penalty or life in prison. The jury became deadlocked again. They could not agree on the death penalty. On October 13, 1993, Dorothea was spared the death penalty. On December 10, 1993, the judge sentenced Dorothea Puente to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. That means she would never be released from prison. She was sent to the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. That is a prison for women. After the trial, there were appeals. An appeal is when a convicted person asks a higher court to review the case for errors. On August 28, 1997, an appellate court in San Jose, California, agreed that the murder convictions were correct. But the court ordered that an examination be done into allegations that some jurors had misbehaved. A 3-day hearing was held. On September 25, 1998, Judge William D. Curtis rejected every allegation of jury misconduct. He said the jurors had done their job properly. Dorothea Puente remained in prison for the rest of her life. She did not commit any more crimes because she was locked up. On March 27, 2011, she died in the prison at Chowchilla. She was 82 years old. The cause of death was natural causes, meaning she died from illness or old age, not from violence. The victims' families were left without their loved ones. Some bodies were never fully recovered or identified. The boarding house at 1426 F Street in Sacramento became known as the Death House. It still stands, but people remember what happened there. Dorothea Puente, who pretended to be a kind landlady who helped the poor and sick, was actually a killer who poisoned her tenants and buried them in her yard to steal their money. The story of Dorothea Puente ends with her dying in prison, while the memories of her victims and the harm she caused remain with their families forever. Story 7. Aileen Carol Pittman was born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan. Rochester is a town near Detroit. Her mother was named Diane Wuornos. Diane was only 14 years old when she married Eileen's father. Her father was named Leo Pittman. He was 18 years old at the time of the marriage. They got married on June 3, 1954. Aileen had an older brother named Keith. He was born on March 14, 1955. Diane filed for divorce less than 2 years after her marriage. She filed for divorce 2 months before Aileen was born. So Aileen never met her father. When Aileen was born, her mother was only 16 years old. In 1967, when Aileen was 11 years old, her father was sent to prison for life. He was convicted of kidnapping and raping a 7-year-old girl. Doctors said he had schizophrenia. On January 30, 1969, he killed himself by hanging in prison. Aileen was almost 13 years old when her father died. In January 1960, Aileen was almost 4 years old. Her mother Diane abandoned her and her brother Keith. Diane left the children with their maternal grandparents. The grandparents were named Lori and Britta Wuornos. In March 1960, the grandparents legally adopted both children. Aileen took their last name, Wuornos. Both grandparents were alcoholics. Aileen later said that her grandfather sexually assaulted her when she was a child. She also said he beat her. Before he beat her, he would force her to take off her clothes. By the time she was 11 years old, Aileen began trading sex for things she needed. She would have sex at school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She also engaged in sexual activity with her brother Keith. In 1970, Aileen was 14 years old. She became pregnant. She said she was raped by a friend of her grandfather. Friends of Aileen later said the rapist was an older man in his 60s who lived nearby. On March 23, 1971, Aileen gave birth to a baby boy. She was living at a home for unwed mothers. Her grandfather forced her to give up the baby for adoption. She never raised her son. A few months after her son was born, Aileen dropped out of school. Around the same time, her grandmother died from liver failure. Then, when Aileen was 15 years old, her grandfather threw her out of the house. She had nowhere to live. She started living in the woods near her old home. To support herself, she began working as a prostitute. On May 27, 1974, Aileen was 18 years old. She was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado. The charges were driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a gun from a moving car. The gun was a .22 caliber pistol. Later she was also charged with failing to appear in court. In 1976, Aileen hitchhiked to Florida. There she met a 69-year-old man named Louis Gratz Fell. He was the president of a yacht club. They married quickly. The announcement of their wedding was printed in the local newspaper. But the marriage did not go well. Aileen kept getting into fights at their local bar. She went to jail briefly for assault. She also hit her husband with his own cane. Within weeks of the marriage, he got a restraining order against her. Aileen then returned to Michigan. On July 14, 1976, Aileen was arrested in Mansalona, Michigan. She was charged with assault and disturbing the peace. She had thrown a cue ball at a bartender's head. 3 days later, on July 17th, Her brother Keith died from esophageal cancer. Aileen received $10,000 from his life insurance. On July 21st, she and her husband annulled their marriage. The marriage had lasted only 9 weeks. In August 1976, Aileen was fined $105 for drunk driving. She used some of the insurance money to pay the fine. She also bought a car with the money, but she wrecked the car shortly after. She spent the rest of the $10,000 within 2 months. In 1978, Aileen was 22 years old. She tried to kill herself by shooting herself in the stomach. Between the ages of 14 and 22, she attempted suicide 6 times. On May 20, 1981, Aileen was arrested in Edgewater, Florida. She had robbed a convenience store at gunpoint. She stole $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. On May 4, 1982, she was sentenced to prison. She was released on June 30, 1983. On May 1, 1984, she was arrested again, this time for trying to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. On November 30, 1985, police named her as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On January 4, 1986, Aileen was arrested in Miami. She was charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice. She had given police identification with her aunt's name on it. In the stolen car, police found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition. On June 2, 1986, police in Volusia County detained Aileen for questioning. A male companion said she pulled a gun inside his car and demanded $200. Police found spare ammunition on her. Under the passenger seat where she had been sitting, police found a .22 caliber pistol. Later in 1986, Aileen was 30 years old. She met a woman named Tyria Moore at a gay bar in Daytona Beach called Zodiac. Tyria was 24 years old and worked as a motel maid. They moved in together. Aileen supported both of them with the money she earned as a prostitute. On July 4, 1987, police in Daytona Beach detained Aileen and Tyria at a bar. They were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. On March 12, 1988, Aileen accused a bus driver of assault. She said he pushed her off the bus after an argument. Tyria was listed as a witness to that incident. Aileen later said about Tyria, "It was love beyond imaginable. Earthly words cannot describe how I felt about Tyria." Aileen continued working as a prostitute on the highways of Florida. Tyria Moore stayed in their home. Aileen brought money home from her work. But in late 1989, something changed inside Aileen. She later said she was tired of being hurt by men. She decided she would start robbing the men who picked her up. She also decided she would kill them so they could not identify her. Aileen carried a gun with her while she worked. The gun was a .22 caliber pistol. She kept it in her bag or in the car. She would wait for a man to stop his car and offer her money for sex. She would get into his car. Then she would ask him to drive to a quiet place. She chose places that were far from other people. She picked wooded areas or empty roads. The first man she killed was Richard Charles Mallory. He was 51 years old. He owned an electronics store in Clearwater, Florida. On November 30th, 1989, Mallory picked up Aileen. He drove her to an abandoned area. Aileen later said Mallory beat her and raped her. She said she shot him in self-defense. She shot him several times. 2 bullets hit his left lung. Those bullets caused his death. After he was dead, Aileen took his money and his belongings. She left his body in the woods. 2 days later, a deputy sheriff found Mallory's abandoned car. On December 13th, searchers found Mallory's body in a wooded area several miles away from where the car was found. Aileen continued working. She did not stop after the first killing. She killed 6 more men over the next 12 months. The second man was David Andrew Spears. He was 47 years old. He worked as a construction worker in Winter Garden, Florida. On May 19, 1990, his family reported him missing. On June 1, 1990, a person found his naked body along a highway called US 19 in Citrus County. He had been shot 6 times with a .22 pistol. Aileen had shot him after he picked her up. She took his money and his car. The third man was Charles Edmund Carskaddon. He was 40 years old. He worked part-time as a rodeo worker. The date of his murder was May 31, 1990. On June 6, 1990, his naked body was found in Pasco County, Florida. He had been shot 9 times with a .22 caliber weapon. His body was wrapped in an electric blanket. It was badly decomposed because it had been outside for several days. Witnesses later told police they saw Aileen driving Carskaddon's car. Aileen also pawned a gun. Police later identified that gun as belonging to Carskaddon. The fourth man was Peter Abraham Seams. He was 65 years old. He was a retired merchant seaman. In June 1990, Seams left his home in Jupiter, Florida. He was driving to Arkansas. He never arrived. On July 4, 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Witnesses saw 2 women abandoning the car. Those 2 women were Aileen and Tyria Moore. Police later found Aileen's handprint on the inside door handle of Seams' car. Seams' body was never found. Aileen later said she killed him, but without a body, police could not charge her for his murder. The fifth man was Troy Eugene Burress. He was 50 years old. He sold sausages in Ocala, Florida. On July 31, 1990, his family reported him missing. On August 4, 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. He had been shot twice. The sixth man was Charles Richard Humphreys. He was 56 years old. People called him Dick. He was a retired United States Air Force major. He had also worked as a state child abuse investigator. He had also been a chief of police in a small town. On September 11, 1990, Aileen killed him. On September 12th, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed. He had been shot 7 times in the head and his torso. His car was later found in Suwannee County. The 7th man was Walter Gino Antonio. He was 61 years old. He worked as a truck driver, a security guard, and a reserve police officer. On November 19, 1990, his nearly naked body was found near a remote logging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times. 5 days later, on November 24th, his car was found in Brevard County. Aileen did not hide her actions carefully. She kept some of the victims' belongings. She took their wallets, their jewelry, their guns, and their cars. She sold some of these items at pawn shops. She signed her name on pawn shop receipts. She also drove the victims' cars around town. Tyria Moore sometimes rode with her in these stolen cars. Aileen and Tyria continued living together. Aileen told Tyria different stories about where the cars and money came from. At first, Tyria may not have known that Aileen was killing men. But over time, Aileen confessed to Tyria what she was doing. Tyria did not report Aileen to the police. She stayed with Aileen and continued living off the money Aileen brought home. On July 4, 1990, Aileen and Tyria were driving Peter Seams' car. They crashed the car. A woman named Rhonda Bailey saw the crash. She gave police a description of 2 women at the scene. That description later helped police find Aileen and Tyria. Police also started finding items from the dead men in local pawn shops. They collected receipts. On one receipt, they found a fingerprint. That fingerprint matched a print found inside Seams' abandoned car. Police already had Aileen's fingerprints on file because of her previous arrests in Florida. They started to connect the evidence. They realized the same woman kept appearing in connection with the stolen cars and the pawned items. But at this point, they did not yet know where to find her. They did not yet make an arrest. Aileen did not know that police were gathering evidence against her. She kept working as a prostitute. She kept robbing and killing men who picked her up. She believed she would not get caught because she left no witnesses. But she left fingerprints, pawn shop receipts, and witnesses who saw her face. After the car crash on July 4th, 1990, the witness Rhonda Bailey gave police a clear description of two women. Police began looking for them. They also started a media campaign. They asked the public to help find the two women seen leaving the abandoned car. At the same time, police were checking pawn shops in the area. They found several items that belonged to the murdered men. These items included a camera, a tool set, and a gun. Each pawn shop had a receipt with a name or a fingerprint. One receipt had a clear fingerprint. Police lifted that fingerprint and ran it through their database. Aileen Wuornos had been arrested many times in Florida. Her fingerprints were already in the police database. The fingerprint on the pawn shop receipt matched Aileen's fingerprint exactly. Police also matched that same fingerprint to the print found on the inside door handle of Peter Seam's abandoned car. This was strong evidence that Aileen was connected to the stolen car and to the victim's belongings. Police now knew Aileen Wuornos was a suspect. But they did not know where she was living. Aileen and Tyria had moved around frequently. They stayed in motels and with friends. Police kept searching. On January 9th, 1991, police found Aileen. She was at a biker bar called The Last Resort in Volusia County, Florida. Police did not arrest her for murder right away. Instead, they arrested her on an outstanding warrant. The warrant was for carrying a concealed weapon. The warrant had been issued under a fake name Aileen used, Lori Grody. The arrest was legal, and it gave police time to hold her while they built the murder case. After Aileen was in custody, police looked for Tyria Moore. They found Tyria the next day, on January 10th, 1991. She was in Pittston, Pennsylvania, where her family lived. Police traveled to Pennsylvania and spoke with Tyria. They told her they believed Aileen had killed several men. They said Tyria could be charged as an accomplice. But they offered her a deal. If Tyria would help them get a confession from Aileen, she would not be prosecuted for any crimes related to the murders. Tyria agreed. Police brought Tyria back to Florida. They put her in a motel room. Then they gave her a phone. They told her to call Aileen in jail. Police listened to the calls. Tyria pretended she was scared. She told Aileen that the police were questioning her. She asked Aileen to clear her name. She said she needed to know the truth. For 3 days, Tyria called Aileen several times. On January 16, 1991, Aileen confessed over the phone. She told Tyria that she had killed the men. She said she killed them because they tried to rape her. She said she acted in self-defense. Police recorded these phone calls. They now had a confession. After the confession, police formally charged Aileen with murder. They started with the murder of Richard Mallory, the first victim. They also charged her with other murders as the investigation continued. The trial for the murder of Richard Mallory began on January 14, 1992. The prosecution had strong evidence. They had the fingerprint from the pawn shop. They had the matching fingerprint from the stolen car. They had witnesses who saw Aileen with the victims' cars. They had Tyria Moore as a witness. Tyria testified in court about what Aileen had told her. She described how Aileen admitted to killing the men. The defense tried to show that Aileen acted in self-defense. They wanted to introduce evidence that Richard Mallory had been convicted of attempted rape in Maryland years before. They had records from a correctional facility showing Mallory had been treated for sexual offending. But the judge refused to allow those records into court. The judge said the evidence was not allowed under Florida law. The judge also denied the defense request for a new trial. On January 27, 1992, the jury found Aileen Wuornos guilty of first-degree murder for killing Richard Mallory. 4 days later, on January 31st, the same jury recommended the death penalty. The judge agreed. Aileen was sentenced to death. After that conviction, Aileen faced trials for the other murders. On March 31st, 1992, she pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Humphreys, Troy Burress, and David Spears. She stood in court and said, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me as I've told you. But these others did not. They only began to start to." On May 15th, 1992, the judge gave her 3 more death sentences. In June 1992, Aileen pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Carskadden. In November 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. In February 1993, she pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Antonio and received her 6th death sentence. No charges were filed for the murder of Peter Seams because his body was never found. In total, Aileen received 6 death sentences. Aileen spent more than 10 years on Florida's death row. She was held at the Broward Correctional Institution for Women. She later was moved to Florida State Prison. She filed appeals, but all of them were denied. In 1996, the United States Supreme Court refused to hear her case. In 2001, Aileen told the Florida Supreme Court that she wanted to stop all appeals. She wrote, "I killed those men, robbed them as cold as ice. And I'd do it again, too. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything, because I'd kill again." She said she was tired of hearing people say she was crazy. She said she was sane, and she knew what she had done. Court-appointed psychiatrists agreed that she was mentally competent to make that decision. On October 9th, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. She was offered a last meal of anything under $20, but she refused. She asked for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back, I'll be back." She died at 9:47 a.m. She was 46 years old. After her death, her body was cremated. Her ashes were scattered beneath a tree in her home state of Michigan by a childhood friend named Dawn Botkins. Tyria Moore was never charged with any crime. She returned to a private life away from the public. The families of the 7 murdered men were left to grieve their losses. Aileen Wuornos became the 10th woman executed in the United States since the death penalty was brought back in 1976, and the 2nd woman executed in Florida. The story of Aileen Wuornos ends with her death by lethal injection on October 9th, 2002, and the 7 men she killed remain dead, their families forever changed by her actions.